Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be reviewing Flicker by Theodore Roszak. This was a book that I found out about through Criminali's channel. He reviewed it, he loved it, and he recommended it highly to people that truly love film history and the minutia of film. And that's me. That's my first love. I have a degree in film study, so I thought, let me give this book a shot, even though it's very long, even though it's out of print and it was hard to find. It sounded like this was something that I should get a hold of. And boy, am I glad that I did. I really loved this book. I think that this might be a new favorite of mine, honestly. Even though it is very different than what I usually enjoy from a book. Let me get into it a little bit. First, I'll start with the plot. What is Flicker about? It is the story of a man named Jonathan Gates. It covers about 15 years of his life. He writes it from his point of view, and it starts in, I think, the early mid-60s. Yeah, that's about right, because I think it covers about 15 years, and it basically ends in 1976. So yeah, early 60s. And he is a film student at the time, and he gets a job at an underground movie theater, like a literal underground movie theater that's run by this slightly older girl named Claire. And she is like the biggest, most pretentious film snob that you've ever encountered. She's the type where her first opinion is her final opinion and it won't change, and it's the only correct opinion. She's like very mean about people that have dissenting opinions. But of course, he falls in love with her and they begin a relationship. And at this theater, she runs it. She shows the types of movies that she thinks the public should watch, what she considers true art and not, that mainstream garbage. And it's through this association with Claire that Gates discovers the works of Max Castle. Max Castle is a director, but not a real one, so don't look up his stuff because you won't find any, who is, in the world of the book, a cult director. His movies don't really, they're very hard to find. A lot of them don't exist in their complete form anymore, because remember, this is the 60s. Home video doesn't exist. The only physical media that you've got is if you have a duplicate of the actual film reel, like an actual 35 millimeter or something. So a lot of his work is just incomplete, just spread out, and Gates becomes obsessed with it. And he becomes obsessed with his work and starts to just find and just pull together whatever Max Castle work that he can find to study it. And in doing so, in watching those movies with Claire and with other people, they start to detect these weird sensations and weird feelings that Max Castle's movies create in them. And this leads into a rabbit hole conspiracy about, was Max Castle hiding something in his movies? Was he trying to convey a message? What message? Why? What was he saying? Is there anything there? Why is his stuff, so hard to find? Stuff like that. And that's really the thrust of this nearly 600-page book. And why I say that it's not typically what I go for in a novel is that there's no definite stakes here. There's no ticking clock element. There's no clear end goal of this is what we need to get to. It's a mystery, it's a suspense thriller that succeeds at being those things, despite the fact that there's no clear end goal. A mystery is we have to find the killer, we have to solve who did this, or suspense is we have to complete X before Y happens. That's not really what this is. There is none of that. It's just the suspense of just wanting to know more. Theodore Roszak does a really great job of making us also kind of feel obsessed with the works of Max Castle, to the point where we need to have the additional information. So every time Gates finds another breadcrumb, it feels exhilarating. Even though I wouldn't say there's any real thrills to it, there's no action. it kind of almost reads like a film history textbook. Like it's just kind of a chronological, like unexcavating of information, which shouldn't be interesting, which shouldn't be engaging, but it is. It's super riveting. It's a little bit hypnotic. I really found just Roszak's way with words. I almost felt like I was Gates watching the films of Max Castle and not being able to understand why it was affecting me the way that it was. Like there was something hidden beneath it, like another layer that I couldn't perceive at the top level, but something subconsciously does. It was interesting. It was so weird, and it was great. And what I really loved about it is that it took all of this fictional lore and it put it within real film history. So there are real figures that factor into the story. Orson Welles plays a factor in here. You know, there's conversations about Max Castle's relationship working with studios like RKO, which was a real film production studio in the 30s. So that blending of fiction and reality was also very interesting. It was very seamlessly done. I kept having to stop early in the book. I kept having to stop and Google to make sure, like, okay, but is that real? No, it's not real, but this was real. Okay, interesting. I described the plot of this book to a friend of mine, and he said it sounded like a Thomas Pynchon novel. I've never read Pynchon, but I guess he blends also reality with fictional conspiracies and stuff. So if you've read Pynchon and you know what that, you know, if you're familiar with that kind of style, gives you an idea of what to expect from Flicker. I can genuinely say I was surprised by this book at pretty much every turn. It was thoroughly engaging despite not having those clear stakes, that clear end goal of what's going to happen here. I highly recommend this book if you are like me, if you are a fan of the minutia of filmmaking and film history, because this book goes deep into that stuff. It might not be interesting for general audiences that don't love that stuff or don't have even a passing interest in it, because you're going to sit and you're going to read paragraphs about how projectors work. You're going to learn a lot about film history that, like, even I didn't know. As a film history student, there was a lot in here that I was not familiar with that is real, that actually happened. I'm sure maybe at some point in my studies I came across like some of these people, but I sure didn't commit them to memory. But Theodore Roszak presents it all in an intellectual way, almost in a professorial way, but never in a boring way. It's super interesting to learn everything that he has to say here. His writing definitely comes across as scholarly. I can tell that this guy knows what he is talking about, and that he has done deep study on the material. It doesn't feel superficial, nothing surface level here. He goes into a lot of information, and I feel like this is a book that only he could have written. I truly feel like this is not just any other cursed film type of thriller or horror. This is a book wholly that belongs to Theodore Roszak. So if you can't tell, I loved Flicker. I highly recommend it. My arbitrary and subjective grade for Flicker by Theodore Roszak, I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10. That last 0.5, I don't know why I'm not giving it. I just feel like it's not right yet. Maybe over time, but do with that what you will. If you have read this book, let me know your thoughts about it. And if you have recommendations for other good, like cursed film stuff or film conspiracy fiction, please let me know. I'm very into it, and I would like to read more. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.